In the summer of 1872, in a secluded farming hamlet near Willowbrook, Kansas, 9-year-old Elias Thornton became the center of a chilling medical mystery that baffled the sparse community. Dr. Ezra Whitlock, the area's sole physician, filled 4 worn notebooks with accounts of a boy whose actions defied every known tenet of human behavior in 19th-century science. To passers-by, Elias seemed ordinary, even disarming with his soft-spoken demeanor. Yet beneath his unassuming facade lurked something inexplicable to the medicine of the time. Over 7 months, 4 people perished in strange accidents near Elias Thornton, alongside scores of livestock found lifeless under eerie circumstances. 13 individuals, all somehow connected to a child whose warm smile never touched his gray-green eyes, met unsettling fates. Local officials buried the records, locking them away for decades. But the truth about Elias Thornton unveils a shadow that questions our understanding of innocence and malevolence in youth. Before we delve deeper into Elias Thornton's story and the dread that seized Willowbrook County, if this tale captivates you, please subscribe to our channel and tap the notification bell to stay updated on our explorations of America's most haunting historical enigmas. Let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from, your state or city. We cherish connecting with our global community of mystery lovers. The saga that would mark Elias Thornton as infamous began not with bloodshed but with grief. Kansas in 1872 still bore the scars of the Civil War's devastation. Villages like Willowbrook had lost sons to far-off battlefields, leaving fractured families and towns grasping for renewal. The Thornton homestead, tucked in a hollow 10 miles north of town, had once thrived. Amos and Clara Thornton had carved out their land with hopes of raising wheat and hogs, but those dreams crumbled when Amos fell at the Battle of Prairie Grove in 1862. Clara struggled to keep the farm afloat, only to succumb to fever in the harsh winter of 1866. Their son, Nathan, just 22, inherited a failing farm and mounting debts. When Nathan learned his brother Caleb had perished in a Confederate prison, leaving a widow and 9-year-old son, he saw both duty and necessity. Elias needed a home, and Nathan needed labor for the grueling farm work. Nathan Thornton was a stern man, hardened by war's toll and loss. His wife, Ruth, had grown cold and sharp over their barren years. Neither was equipped to nurture a child, especially one who arrived in the spring of 1871 with only a tattered satchel and eyes too knowing for his tender age. Elias Thornton was slight, with skin that reddened under the Kansas sun, and dark hair Ruth kept clipped to ward off pests. He rarely spoke of his past, offering only slivers when prodded, his father a soldier, his mother wasting away, neighbors sheltering him briefly after her death. Adults noted Elias's courtesy. He always said yes, sir, and yes, ma'am, never shirking chores or discipline. He appeared the epitome of a dutiful child. Dr. Ezra Whitlock first met Elias in July 1871, when the boy trailed his uncle into town for supplies. Whitlock, trained at the Kansas Medical Institute and seasoned by treating soldiers from both sides of the war, had a knack for reading people. Something about the Thornton boy unnerved him, though he couldn't pinpoint why. The child was impeccably polite, Whitlock later wrote in his notes. He answered clearly, held steady eye contact, and showed none of the restlessness common in rural youths meeting strangers. Yet his presence stirred unease. His gaze carried a scrutiny, as if he were dissecting me with the same curiosity I apply to my patients. Willowbrook's tight-knit community meant everyone knew each other's affairs. The Thornton farm was remote, but not so distant that neighbors missed peculiarities. Mrs. Abigail Warner, whose land adjoined the Thorntons, often saw Elias toiling in the fields or tending livestock. She told her husband, Jonah, that the boy worked with unnatural diligence for his age, never pausing to play or rest as children do. "It's like watching a clockwork figure," she said over supper. "He labors from dawn to dusk, no complaints, no faltering. A boy ought to have some spark of mischief in him." The Warners raised goats, and Abigail noticed her animals grew skittish whenever Elias neared their shared fence. They'd huddle, bleating nervously, avoiding the boundary. Jonah brushed it off as chance, but Abigail sensed the animals perceived something humans overlooked. The first death struck on a blistering afternoon in September 1871. Young Clara Hayes, age 6, daughter of the town's miller, was known for her cheerful giggle and habit of straying. She'd been playing near Sparrow Brook, a gentle stream threading through several farms, including the Thorntons. Elias discovered her body. He appeared at the Hayes' doorstep as they readied for dinner, his shirt damp and face pale with apparent shock. "Mrs. Hayes," he said calmly though trembling, "I found Clara by the brook. She ain't moving." The search party found Clara face down in water, barely a foot deep. Dr. Whitlock, called at once, ruled it a drowning, a tragic but familiar rural mishap where children roamed unsupervised near streams. What troubled Whitlock was Elias's account. The boy gave a precise recounting of Clara's location, her body's posture, and her sodden dress. Asked why he was there, Elias said he'd been searching for a stray lamb. His memory was strikingly sharp, Whitlock recorded. He described the exact angle of the child's arms, how her skirt snagged on a root, even the murk of the water near her face. Such clarity seemed odd for a boy claiming distress. Nathan confirmed a lamb had gone missing that morning, and Elias had been sent to check the brook. The lamb turned up days later, grazing contently half a mile from Clara's drowning spot. The Hayes family, shattered, thanked Elias for his swift alert. At Clara's funeral, Elias sat solemnly with Nathan and Ruth, head bowed through the service. When thanked, he murmured, "I wish I'd found her sooner," his tone perfectly mournful. But Abigail Warner, watching from across the chapel, noticed something chilling. As Clara's mother wept and the tiny coffin passed, Elias's face remained still. His bowed head hid eyes that, when he thought himself unseen, stayed dry and observant, absorbing every detail. The second death followed 4 weeks later. Old Matthias Berg, a Swedish trapper retired by rheumatism, was found at the base of a craggy rise called Reaper's Ridge, overlooking Sparrow Brook. Matthias often visited the ridge to tend wild berry patches he'd cultivated. Elias, again, was tied to the discovery. Returning from town, he noticed something odd below the ridge. "I saw Mr. Berg's cap tangled in a briar," he told the crowd. "I called, but he didn't answer, so I went down." Matthias was dead, his spine snapped from an apparent fall off the 35-foot ridge. Whitlock's examination suggested instant death on impact. Curiously, several dead sparrows lay scattered near the body, far from any nest. Berg knew that ridge like his own hands, Jonah Warner told Whitlock. "Climbed it for years, never slipped. Doesn't add up." Elias suggested Matthias might have been startled by birds and lost his balance. "He always said they'd flutter up if you got too close," the boy said. Whitlock found the idea reasonable, but was disturbed by the scene. The dead sparrows were clustered tightly around Matthias, not strewn along a path as if he'd fled a flock. Checking the ridge's berry patches, Whitlock found them undisturbed, with no sign of recent bird activity. The third death dispelled any notion of happenstance. In October 1871, 7-year-old Samuel Carver disappeared while exploring the thickets near his family's homestead. His remains were discovered 5 days later in a forgotten cistern a mile from where he was last seen. Elias Thornton had eagerly joined the search effort. For 4 days, Elias trekked with the adult volunteers, displaying uncanny stamina for a boy his age. He navigated the dense brush with ease, leading searchers through tangled paths even lifelong locals found daunting. When asked how he knew the land so well, Elias said he often wandered the thickets in his spare time, collecting roots and berries his Aunt Ruth used for remedies and cooking. On the 5th day, Elias arrived at the Carver homestead at first light. "I found something," he told Samuel's mother, his voice weary. "There's an old cistern about a mile east. I thought I heard a faint cry." The cistern was nearly invisible, obscured by vines and fallen branches. Samuel Carver lay at its bottom, barely alive, ravaged by thirst and cold. Dr. Ezra Whitlock was called at once, but Samuel died hours after being hoisted out, his frail body too weak to endure. The boy was trapped for nearly 5 days, Whitlock wrote in his notes. That Elias Thornton located him in such a hidden spot raises unsettling questions. How vast is his knowledge of the terrain? What other secrets might he hold? More disturbing was Elias's demeanor during Samuel's final moments. As the Carvers kept vigil over their fading son, Elias sat silently in a corner, head bowed as if in prayer. But Whitlock, positioned to watch unnoticed, saw something chilling. Elias wasn't praying. His lips moved faintly, but his gray-green eyes locked onto Samuel with a clinical gaze, as if documenting every gasp, every shudder, every fading sign of life. When Samuel passed, Elias's face showed no sorrow, only what Whitlock could describe as quiet fulfillment. After the burial, Whitlock visited the cistern site, driven by an unease he couldn't name. The cistern was expertly concealed, buried under debris that would have taken effort to shift. Elias had claimed to hear crying, yet the cistern's depth and thick cover made that unlikely. Examining closer, Whitlock noticed something overlooked in the frantic rescue. The branches and vines around the cistern's rim were arranged with eerie precision, forming a natural disguise nearly impossible to spot unless one knew where to look. The thought was too grim to voice, but Whitlock couldn't dismiss the idea that Samuel hadn't fallen into the cistern. Someone had placed him there, hiding the spot until he was too far gone to survive. That night, Whitlock began a meticulous log on Elias Thornton. If his suspicions held, the boy was a threat to Willowbrook. But suspicions weren't proof, and proof was what Whitlock needed. The challenge was Elias's flawless facade. He attended chapel weekly with Nathan and Ruth, reciting hymns with solemnity. He toiled tirelessly on the farm, tackling chores that would exhaust grown men. He spoke courteously to elders, showing deference to authority. Every tragedy had a tidy explanation. Elias was hunting a stray lamb when he found Clara Hayes. He was returning from town when he spotted Matthias Berg's cap. He'd joined the search for Samuel Carver out of neighborly duty. Yet Whitlock's medical training urged him to see beyond appearances. Treating war's casualties had taught him to spot men who killed not from duty or survival, but from a deeper, colder impulse, a detachment from human feeling, marked by muted reactions to horror and an eerie fascination with pain. Elias Thornton bore these traits, distilled into a 9-year-old's frame. Whitlock's inquiry deepened in November 1871. As the town's physician, he visited farms under the guise of checking on families worn by war's aftermath, but his true aim was to probe Elias's influence. His findings sketched a grim portrait of a boy at the heart of spreading calamity. Nearby farms reported livestock dying at alarming rates, not from illness but from bizarre injuries. Goats were found with snapped spines, blamed on coyotes that left no tracks. Hogs bore strange cuts that festered fatally. Mules grew inexplicably lame, forcing owners to end their suffering. Abigail Warner told Whitlock she'd lost 22 goats in 3 months. "It's queer," she said. "1 or 2 dead each week, always with their necks broken clean. Jonah says coyotes, but I see no claw marks. It's too precise, too neat." Inspecting the latest casualties, Whitlock found evidence backing Abigail's doubts. The goats' necks were broken with exact force at specific points, suggesting anatomical precision, not the chaotic mauling of predators. Similar oddities surfaced elsewhere. Amos Reed lost 4 piglets to accidents, animals caught in netting or crushed under beams in ways that defied reason. Caleb Holt's prized ram fell into a ravine, breaking its neck, despite its sure-footed nature. All affected farms lay within a short walk of the Thornton land, and several neighbors recalled seeing Elias nearby around the time of the losses. "I saw him by our pasture the day before we found the piglets," Reed told Whitlock. "Thought it strange, him being so far out, but he gave a polite nod and called out a hello like a proper boy." Whitlock began observing Elias closely during routine visits to the Thornton farm. The boy was always present, standing quietly as Whitlock treated Nathan and Ruth for farming's toll. But Elias watched the examinations keenly, asking questions about physiology and procedures that seemed advanced for his age. "How can you tell if someone's truly gone?" Elias asked once, his tone as casual as if asking about the harvest. "Sometimes they just seem asleep." When pressed, he said he wanted to be prepared if someone was hurt far from town. "Uncle Nathan says I need to know what to do in a crisis," he added. The answer was logical, but Whitlock sensed an unnatural curiosity in Elias's questions about death's mechanics. How long it took, what signs to watch for, whether certain injuries could be survived, posed with the detachment of a surgeon studying corpses. During these talks, Whitlock tested Elias, slipping in false medical claims, saying certain wounds were always fatal or linking symptoms to wrong conditions. Elias never corrected him outright, but absorbed every word with startling recall. More unsettling was Elias's reaction to Whitlock's war stories. While most children winced or teared up at tales of battlefield wounds, Elias listened raptly, asking about injury patterns, blood volume, and mortality rates. "Did they cry much when you sawed their legs off?" he asked once, his gray-green eyes fixed on Whitlock. "Or were they too weak to make a sound?" The question, delivered politely, sent a shiver through Whitlock he'd never shake. By December 1871, Whitlock had filled 2 notebooks with notes on Elias Thornton, painting a child with an adult's grasp of harm and a void of empathy. But notes weren't proof, and proof was essential to safeguard the community from what Whitlock feared was a predator in disguise. His chance came when Nathan Thornton sprained his ankle during the autumn reaping, requiring rest and frequent checkups. These visits gave Whitlock rare access to the Thornton home, where he engaged Elias in extended talks subtly, probing his mind, What he uncovered surpassed his darkest fears. Elias had been experimenting on living creatures for months, perhaps years. Through careful questions and observation, Whitlock learned the boy had been trapping and tormenting small animals, studying their reactions to pain and injury. Elias mentioned a ravine where he went to think alone. When Whitlock explored it, he found a chilling cache: animal skulls neatly arranged, crude tools crafted from farm scraps, and sketches detailing experiments in cruelty and dissection. The sketches were the most harrowing find. Drawn with unsettling skill for a 9-year-old, they depicted rabbits, foxes, sparrows, and even larger creatures in stages of mutilation and agony. Each was paired with notes in Elias Thornton's neat script, detailing the animals' reactions, their time to death, and observations on which methods inflicted the most pain. Subjects stayed alert for roughly 12 minutes after leg severance. One note read beside a precise sketch of a fox. Whimpers faded slowly. Motion stopped after neck compression. Dr. Ezra Whitlock realized Elias had used the community's animals as test subjects for escalating experiments in cruelty. The accidental livestock deaths on nearby farms were no accidents. They stemmed from Elias's urge to test his techniques on bigger targets. Most chilling were newer drawings, shifting from animals to human figures. These showed children and adults in poses of torment, with speculative notes on human anatomy and methods of harm. One sketch unmistakably portrayed Clara Hayes, the first child to die. Another captured Matthias Berg. A third showed Samuel Carver in the cistern, with annotations on dehydration's toll on the body. Elias Thornton hadn't merely been present at these deaths. He had orchestrated them, executed them with cold precision, and recorded the outcomes for further study. The horror in Willowbrook County was far from over. If this tale sends shivers down your spine, share it with a friend who thrives on dark mysteries. Hit the like button to support our content, and subscribe to catch every chilling story. Let's uncover what happens next together. Whitlock faced an impossible dilemma. The cave's evidence proved Elias was behind multiple deaths, but it was gathered through an unauthorized search. The notion of a 9-year-old as a calculating killer was so alien to 1871's understanding that no court would entertain it. Medical science lacked terms like psychopathy or sociopathy. Children were seen as innately pure, corrupted only by trauma or poor upbringing. The idea of a child born without empathy or moral compass was unthinkable. Whitlock knew presenting his findings to authorities would likely brand him as unhinged from years of treating war's horrors. The evidence would be dismissed, Elias defended as a grieving orphan, and the deaths would persist. Instead, Whitlock chose to confront Elias directly. During his next visit to the Thornton farm, he asked the boy to join him in checking the livestock in a distant field. Alone, Whitlock revealed his discovery in the ravine. Elias's response was unexpected. No shock, no denial, no fear. He listened calmly as Whitlock described the sketches and notes, occasionally nodding as if approving the doctor's accuracy. "You won't tell anyone," Elias said when Whitlock finished, his tone not pleading but certain. "Why not?" Whitlock asked, curious about the boy's logic. Elias smiled, a rare, genuine expression. "Because they'd never believe you," he said. "And because you want to see what I'll do next." Elias was right. Whitlock knew his claims would sound like madness. Yet the boy had also tapped into a truth Whitlock barely admitted to himself, a clinical fascination with studying this uniquely dangerous mind. "How long have you been doing this?" Whitlock asked. "Since I was 4, Elias replied flatly. "Maybe before. Started with bugs, then rats, then bigger creatures. It's curious how different animals react to the same wounds. People, though," Elias shrugged. "They're experiments, too. I wanted to know if humans react like animals. They mostly do, but they understand what's happening. That makes it richer." Whitlock felt a chill unrelated to the December cold. "What's next?" he asked. Elias considered this gravely. "I want to know what happens when you hurt someone who trusts you completely, someone who'd never suspect until it's too late." The implication was clear. Elias planned to target Nathan and Ruth. Whitlock knew time was short, days, perhaps hours, before Elias acted. The boy's casual confidence suggested he felt untouchable, and his history showed he moved swiftly once decided. That night, Whitlock visited Sheriff Daniel Boone in Willowbrook. Boone, a no-nonsense former Union captain, was skeptical of theories but trusted Whitlock's judgment. Presenting his case carefully, Whitlock focused on facts: the ravine's drawings, the pattern of deaths, Elias's anatomical knowledge, and his stated intent to kill his aunt and uncle. He showed Boone the sketches, their precision unnerving even the battle-hardened sheriff. "Even if half this is true," Boone said, studying the disturbing images, "we can't jail a child on drawings and hunches. But we can watch him and be ready if he tries anything." Whitlock and Boone devised a plan with Boone's most trusted deputies, men hardened by war and reliable under pressure. Whitlock would visit the Thornton farm at his usual time, bringing laudanum supposedly for Nathan's ankle, but actually to sedate Nathan and Ruth, making them harder for Elias to harm. Boone and his deputies would station themselves around the farm, close enough to act, far enough to stay hidden. The plan launched the next morning. As Whitlock's buggy neared the farmhouse, an eerie silence gripped the property. The usual clucks of chickens and grunts of hogs were absent. Elias stood in the doorway before Whitlock dismounted, his gray-green eyes tracking the doctor with predatory focus. Dressed in work clothes, his sleeves were rolled up, hands freshly scrubbed, a sign of preparation for something grim. "Good morning, Dr. Whitlock," Elias said, his voice polite but laced with anticipation. "I've been waiting." The word waiting chilled Whitlock, hinting Elias had anticipated this visit, perhaps even woven it into his plans. Inside, Nathan and Ruth lay in their bedroom, seemingly asleep. But as Whitlock checked Nathan's pulse, he noted shallow breathing and a pallor suggesting more than rest. "What did you give them?" Whitlock asked, not looking at Elias but sensing his watchful gaze. "Just some roots from the thickets," Elias replied, his innocence calculated. "Lots of useful plants out there." Whitlock confirmed both were alive but deeply unconscious, dosed with precision to keep them helpless yet living, for now. "They won't wake for hours," Elias said casually. "Plenty of time to talk." What followed was a conversation Whitlock would never forget. Elias spoke of murder with a scientist's detachment, detailing his experiments on animals and humans. "Clara Hayes showed me drowning takes time," he said, settling into a chair. "People think it's quick, but there's panic, thrashing, a pattern of gasps. I held her under for nearly 4 minutes. She fought harder than I thought." Whitlock's blood ran cold. "You held her?" Elias nodded eagerly. "She was splashing by the brook. I said I'd found a shiny pebble. When she leaned down, I pushed her head under. She was small, didn't take much force. Matthiasberg, Elias explained, required cunning. He was too strong, so I loosened rocks on the ridge the night before. I caught sparrows and stuffed them in a sack. When he climbed up, I threw it at him, yelling about a flock. He stumbled over the edge, just as I planned. Samuel Carver was the most fascinating. I didn't kill him fast. I wanted to see a slow death. I lured him with talk of a fox den, helped him into the cistern, then covered it. I gave him just enough water each day to linger." Elias wasn't speculating about future acts. He had plans, and they included the house's occupants. "What about Nathan and Ruth?" Whitlock asked. Elias's smile widened. "That's where you come in, Dr. Whitlock. My others didn't know what was coming. But you know what I am. That makes you perfect for something new." As he spoke, Elias gathered items, rope, a heavy iron poker, a sharpened sickle, arranging them with surgical care. "I want to see what happens when someone who knows they'll die tries to save others. Will you fight me to save them? Or run and leave them behind?" Time for talk was over. Elias's plans put everyone in the house in immediate danger. Whitlock drew the revolver from his bag and aimed it at Elias. "Step away from the sickle," he said, voice steady despite his pounding heart. Elias studied the gun with curiosity, not fear. "That's a Colt Army, right?" he asked. "Holds 6 shots." Whitlock nodded, instantly regretting it. "And how many are you protecting?" Elias continued. "Nathan, Ruth, yourself, and the 3 deputies outside. 6 if I count right. Shoot me, and you're out of bullets." Elias stepped closer, fearless. "You want to know why I'm like this, don't you? Born this way or made. If there are others like me, and how to spot them before they kill." Elias Thornton's words cut deeper than any blade, his ability to exploit Dr. Ezra Whitlock's curiosity, as terrifying as his penchant for violence. The boy read people with chilling precision, predicting and manipulating their actions even when they knew his game. The confrontation erupted as Elias neared his unconscious uncle with a coil of rope. Whitlock lunged to stop him, but Elias moved with startling agility, drawing a sickle and slashing at the doctor's forearm. The fight was brief but brutal. Elias, though smaller, fought with a predator's ferocity, wielding the sickle with practiced skill that betrayed his anatomical knowledge. Whitlock seized Elias's wrist, forcing him to drop the weapon, only for the boy to produce a hidden knife from his belt. It was clear Elias had stashed blades throughout the house, prepared for this moment. The clash drew Sheriff Daniel Boone and his deputies, who burst through the kitchen door to find Whitlock grappling with Elias as Nathan and Ruth Thornton lay oblivious in their drugged sleep. Deputy Caleb Holt pinned Elias, allowing Whitlock to check on the couple. When the chaos settled, Elias sat calmly in a corner, clothes torn, face bloodied, but his gray-green eyes still gleaming with that cold intellect that had haunted Whitlock from the start. "You can't prove a thing," Elias said as the deputies bound him. "No one will believe a child did all that." Boone stared at the boy, torn between revulsion and awe. "Maybe not," he said. "But trying to kill your kin is enough to lock you away, age be damned." Elias's smile returned, chillingly confident. "You won't hang me. I'm too young, and too fascinating. Someone will want to study me. If this tale chills you, share it with a friend who loves dark mysteries. Like this content to support us, and subscribe to catch every eerie story. Let's uncover what's next together." Elias was wrong about his fate, but right about the difficulty of proving his crimes. When Boone presented the ravine's evidence to county prosecutors, he met the resistance Whitlock had foreseen. The sketches and notes were dismissed as the work of a traumatized orphan, the string of deaths chalked up to coincidence and Elias's knack for being helpful in crises. But the attack on Nathan and Ruth couldn't be ignored. 3 deputies had seen Elias with a sickle, intent clear. Even the most charitable couldn't deny a 9-year-old's attempt to murder his family signaled something deeply wrong. Kansas's 1871 legal system had no mechanism for violent children. Elias was too young for adult trial, yet too dangerous for an orphanage. The case baffled the state's courts, drawing scholars and doctors from Chicago to St. Louis. After months of debate, a solution emerged. Elias would be committed to the Kansas State Asylum in Topeka for study and treatment by leading alienists. The decision pleased no one. Prosecutors wanted a murder trial, defense lawyers argued Elias's youth absolved him, and doctors split between those hoping for reform and those deeming him a lost cause. Whitlock stayed at the asylum for 4 months, documenting Elias's behavior and aiding staff in grappling with his nature. His case study, unpublished until decades later, was among the earliest analyses of antisocial behavior in youth. Elias adapted to the asylum with his trademark cunning, mimicking emotions to sway staff. He'd weep during discussions of his crimes, feign remorse, and express gratitude for care, convincing some of his progress. But Whitlock saw through it. Elias was cataloging human reactions, honing his manipulation. "The subject pairs exceptional intellect with a void of genuine emotion," Whitlock wrote. "He mimics normal responses so well that casual observers are fooled, but prolonged scrutiny reveals the act. Happiness to him is a mask worn to sustain favor, sadness a tool to elicit aid. He feels neither." Whitlock's sessions uncovered Elias's chilling plans. When Elias thought he'd won Whitlock's trust, he shared ideas for future experiments that dwarfed his past atrocities and cruelty. He envisions complex scenarios testing human endurance under torture, Whitlock noted privately. His creativity, psychological insight, and attention to detail suggest that, if freed, he could become one of America's most dangerous figures. Over 20 months at the asylum, several incidents echoed Elias's methods. 4 patients died in apparent accidents or natural causes, but closer inspection revealed deliberate staging. 2 elderly patients succumbed to heart failure after time with Elias, despite prior good health. A younger patient fell from a staircase, injuring himself gravely, in a spot Elias had visited hours earlier. Some patients reported Elias standing by their beds at night, silently watching. Staff felt his impact too. Nurses suffered vivid nightmares of violence after working with him, and 2 orderlies requested transfers, unnerved by a sense of being watched. Dr. Clara Hensley, a psychiatrist brought from Boston, found Elias's secret journal. He'd persuaded a nurse to give him paper for therapeutic writing, producing entries that seemed contrite, a troubled boy seeking redemption. But Hensley, versed in coded systems, cracked a hidden cipher. The decoded text revealed Elias's true intent, a meticulous study of the asylum's routines, staff, and security, aimed at perfecting manipulation and planning an escape. Day 62, Dr. H trusts my regret displays, one entry read. Her empathy grows. For more weeks of performance should secure closer access. This discovery tightened security, limiting Elias's interactions, but he pivoted to studying escape routes and staff habits. In spring 1873, Elias vanished from the asylum under murky circumstances. The official report claimed he slipped away during a courtyard transfer, despite multiple guards. Whitlock believed the escape was far more calculated, the result of months of planning. Evidence later showed Elias had subtly manipulated staff. Guards admitted to minor favors, like extra yard time or books, which likely opened escape windows. He studied the asylum for nearly 2 years, Whitlock wrote in his final report. He knew its people better than they knew themselves. His escape was a masterstroke, not a fluke. In the years after, Whitlock tracked reports of odd deaths across the Midwest, staged accidents, tortured animals, and sightings of a poised, helpful youth. Elias, now older and likely stronger, had honed his skills in the asylum, evading past mistakes. His psychological acumen and lack of conscience made him a singular threat. Whitlock devoted his career to these cases, his private journals, found after his 1896 death, spanning thousands of pages on potential Elias sightings and theories on innate evil. Elias's case shaped debates on justice, child psychology, and mental health for decades, challenging assumptions about innocence and the limits of psychiatric assessment. The Thornton farm was abandoned after Nathan and Ruth recovered. Unable to stay where they'd sheltered a killer, they left Kansas under new names, fearing Elias's return. The land was sold in the 1900s, but locals shunned it. The ravine where Elias conducted his experiments was sealed by Boone, though its infamy lingered. Folklore claimed animals avoided the area. Whitlock's journals, donated to the Kansas Historical Society in 1927 by his son, remain accessible to researchers studying early psychology. Nathan died in 1891, Ruth in 1887, childless and reclusive. In his last entry, days before his 1896 death, Whitlock wrote, "For 25 years, I've sought to grasp what Elias Thornton was, a glimpse of humanity stripped of moral bounds. He was no anomaly, but a warning of what lies dormant when empathy fails. If he lived, a man walks America who reads minds like books, bends wills like clay, and sees us as mere specimens." Elias's story teaches that evil can hide in a child's smile, and our trust in innocence may blind us to truth. What do you make of this tale? Was Elias's fate fully uncovered, or does more lurk beyond the records? Share your thoughts below on this grim chapter of history. If you crave more dark mysteries, subscribe, hit the bell, and share with a fellow mystery lover. Truth often outstrips fiction, and history hides secrets that test our grasp of humanity. Until next time,